This is the briefing video for the meeting on the 8th of July, 2024, 6 p.m. for the Dalton Township Board of Trustees. Opening, we have a few items slightly changed or added in the business section here. So we'll have our call to order, invocation and pledge of allegiance, roll call, approval of agenda, approval of past meeting minutes, treasurer's report, pay the bills, fire department report, planning commission report, planning and zoning report, zoning board of appeals report, because we had one of those meetings. It's been a while since we've had one of those, which I think is a good sign in how we've been adjusting the ordinance to address different situations. And this one is becoming that as well. We have our Parks and Recreation Committee report, which is a new thing because Parks and Recreation Committee was recently created. Our maintenance and grounds reports, cemetery reports, which is becoming a new thing, and we want to add that in. And she addresses one of the agenda items in there as well. And then visiting official and candidate updates. And then we have our first public comment section, and we get into our decision items. And there's a lot of pretty big stuff in this meeting that affects the election in August and in November. And the development deals in here, if they go decently well, should be $100 million worth of development over the next couple of decades in Dalton Township as well. So we'll see if they go well over that period of time. Time will tell, but yeah, potentially $100 million worth of development in here. So the first item is the clerk resignation. Tracy wrote a letter. She writes a letter, she signs it, she turns it into herself because it has to be into the clerk's office. And then I put it in the agenda and the board has to vote on that. And then the next item is the clerk appointment. So the proposal in here is for her to be done that night. So essentially at midnight, 11:59 p.m. because it's not good to qualify which side midnight is on, right? So 11:59 p.m. on July 8th. And then for Heather to be appointed, she's currently the administrative assistant and deputy clerk and cemetery coordinator. So it seems like it'd be the smoothest transition to put her in that role. She would function well there. She's interested in it. And to start that on July 9th. All right, so clerk resignation, then clerk appointment. And then we have the land bid opening on Lakewood and Russell. This is the large 170 some acre piece between Lakewood and Russell, just below the village there. And so we have the one bid included in here. Another bid could come in before the meeting, and the board would have to consider that, go through what the proposal is. So because we asked for proposals on the land use here. And we had set the minimum bid for $220,575. And then next we have water testing on West Lake. I had this for discussion at the last meeting, and I was hoping to have potentially a water test done and then bring those results to the board, but it took a while. Some of the people I reached out to didn't get back to me, and some people didn't know what kind of testing would make sense, and I was asking their opinion on it because I don't know what kind of testing would make sense. Eventually, I got hold of this organization that was able to get us quotes, but someone was on vacation, so it was a little delayed. So it was within a couple of weeks of the meeting anyways at that point, and some of the numbers that they proposed were different types of projects than I was thinking, and they came back larger than I would think, so the board would have to make those decisions anyway. But there is a $1,700 test in there that I think would probably make the most sense to move forward with. So we'll have that included in here. Next, we have the land sale request on Russell Road. And at the last meeting, this is the one that was pulled out of that large land purchase. So we're seeing that as a first step of the next land sale request for this individual. Next, we have the water policy board members with Tracy stepping away, and she wanted to step away from the water policy board. Then we need to put a new member of the board on there, or a new representative for Dalton Township. And then we might as well do the alternate as well, which the alternate can end up back at Christie if she wants, but if something switches around, I just included them both on here. Next, we have separate mechanical and plumbing inspector contracts. Currently, our mechanical and plumbing inspector is the same person. He does both. That's unusual because a lot of times people aren't licensed and able to do both. And it makes sense as he's starting to wrap up his career and everything, start switching this over and take some of the load off him as well. But first step, makes sense to separate this contract. And then the board could set up so that the executive committee, supervisor, clerk, and treasurer do the hiring for that position like we do other hirings, or it can be brought to the board for proposal for that. And I can reach out to people and try to see who is interested in this type of thing. Next, we have the road commission resolution and permit. And the road commission messaged a number of municipalities around the county and said that they are supposed to be requesting a resolution and permit from us for doing work within the right of way for like water and sewer and stuff like this on a yearly basis, on an annual basis, and they just haven't been doing it. So this is the first time I've seen it in over 3.5 years. But they said this is supposed to be an annual thing. Next, we have new streetlight resolution and contract. This is a number of months ago, someone contacted me about visibility on Holton M120 and Sweeter and seeing if a streetlight would make sense there. So I sent it in to consumers, asked if they thought it would make sense. They dropped the engineering and everything and get the information over to us, and then I bring it to the board. So that's where we are on that one. Next, we have zoning change hearing for planned unit development on Hine Road. And so this is over in the business park, just east of Whitehall Road, just west of Hine Road, just north of Agard Road. So right in that section along Whitehall. And this is within the idea of the light industrial use, decent development going in there, decent number of plans in here. This one, because it's planned unit development, also has to be a hearing at the board. Planning Commission has already gone through their hearing. And then we have the zoning change on Whitehall Road. And this one is just south there, just across from this other development to the south. And this is a residential development. And then next and that one doesn't need a hearing, it's not a planned unit development, so it's just a zoning change. Next, we have a resident thank you, and this we had as a discussion item at the last meeting where one resident had written up a letter and proposed a thank you for another resident, and potentially for that to become a yearly thing as well. And I mean, realistically, if it shows goodwill, which I think it would, and there's more people to recognize than necessarily just one every year, it could become just a thing on an ongoing basis. So we'll see how it goes out. Next, we have the cemetery ordinance buyback time frame, and this Heather addresses in her cemetery report earlier in the meeting. It said at 40 years now, and then there's a process after the 40 years to go through, but it was brought up when we were passing the whole ordinance if that should or should not be extended. So that's available for the board to vote on. Next, we have the land sale policy bid time, and this came up because that policy had the hours that we closed on Mondays before the meetings as 4:30 when we were open Monday through Friday, but when we expanded the hours from 9 to 4:30 to 8 to 5:30 Monday through Thursday, that time frame probably should have been adjusted there. And so there was a difference in the policy versus the notice that went out. So a little bit of controversy there, not huge necessarily, but it should be corrected. And so I wrote this up so that it's just the notice in the policy. And that way, even if there's a special meeting in the future, whatever the notice says would apply. So it should be able to fluctuate with that change, with that adjust. Next, we have quarterly budget adjustments. So most of our revenue is not in because we have all the winter tax season, which hasn't come up yet. A lot of our big bills are not in, such as all of our road projects, large amount of road projects this year, those bills aren't in. So we have a lot of that type of stuff. And then there's some adjustments that I think would make sense to make. Looks like the senior millage money. And we talked about this in the budget. The county fiscal year and the township fiscal year do not align. And there's not a way to align them. We can't shift our fiscal year anywhere we want. There's a short range that the state sets. And so that program doesn't work good as far as the timing is concerned. And so with us doing the plowing, we spend part in both years. So I think that'll need to be adjusted from when we actually had the bills and everything in this year. But we don't have the audit done for this year either. And so I think it kind of makes sense to shore that up before we make that adjustment, but I think it'll have to be made in the future. I included on the salary list the Parks and Recreation Committee, but didn't actually put them in as a line item for their wages in the budget. So that's an obvious one to make, and I've included that. I have an adjustment for which Justin came up with, proposed the $26,000 we'd slated for a tractor, which would be useful in some ways. Obviously, we're doing a ton of brush right now. It would probably be useful for moving some of those piles, that type of stuff, to have a more powerful tractor. But nevertheless, would probably be more useful to put into construction and repairs in the park. So I have that adjustment in there and a few other ones, but not very extensive. But I've included the full reports on what our budget was set as and the activity up to this point, so everyone can just see everything that's happening as an update on the finances. Next, we have our discussion items, and this is the backup generator. The township was without power for a few days, on partial phase power for a while, and then no power at all for a while. We had one planning commission meeting that we ran with partial phase power, and I ran a cord so we could record the meeting and get it on YouTube, but we had natural lighting because the lights weren't on the partial phase. And then later we ended up having election training without any power at all. So we had a generator set up outside of the window of my office, and we ran cords through there to get multiple things done and to get packets out for the zoning board of appeals meeting. And so not ideal, although the weather was nice, ironically, after the bad weather that caused the disaster. And so it's reasonable to consider a generator backup for the building. They're not cheap, which is why I haven't pushed for it in the past. And I asked our electrician, which was going on a very small amount of sleep at that point, but looking at this building, what do you think? I'd estimated 30 grand. He said 25 to 40 grand, right in there. So it's not a small item, but worth the discussion, worth considering, especially with what recently happened. Definitely brought it into everyone's minds, so everyone's thinking about it. And that brings us to our second public and board comment and the adjournment of the meeting. So decent amount of stuff, decently impactful, should be interesting. And I know this is odd reading for a holiday weekend. It's 4th of July right now, and we're leading right into the holiday weekend. But hopefully everyone is able to review it somewhat, review at least the things that they're uncertain on, and get some understanding of it. It's a decent amount of information. It's not a gigantic packet like I've had in the past, but larger than most municipalities put out for sure. I understand that. So it did come in as less than 100 pages, which is 99 pages. So it just made it under the line. Any questions, thoughts, ideas, comments, concerns, feel free to reach out. My direct line at the office is area code 231-332-6700 or email supervisor@daltontownship.org. Otherwise, this is Jeff signing off until we see each other probably at the meeting and after the meeting.